For Morningstar, I'm Christian Charret. I'm here today with David O'Leary, co-founder and managing partner at Eden Valley Partners. In a previous video, we talked about how affluent Canadians can integrate philanthropy into their financial planning. And a lot of the ideas that we discussed were aimed mostly at older Canadians who are at or near the end of their working lives. But the younger generation can also play a part in charitable giving. David, thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So how does philanthropy differ for people who are in their 20s and 30s from someone who's closer to retirement?
Well, first thing is they typically have a lot less money, which I think isn't necessarily a problem. There are a growing number of ways that younger people can get involved in the charitable space. Aside from just giving one-off donations. So really being strategic and thoughtful about their giving and have control over what organizations they support through giving circles, donor-advised funds, things like that, which we can touch on. But there are more ways for them to get involved than there have been historically. Other things are they're younger, so their priorities and the causes that they care about will evolve over time. What they feel passionate about is more likely to change when you're in your 20s and 30s than if you're in your 60s or 70s. And then lastly, they're the ones that could probably benefit the most because they have the longest time horizon by being very strategic about and thoughtful about their philanthropy. So think about a scenario where you're, when you get asked at a checkout at the grocery store, you agree to give $10 here and $50 there for somebody's run. Or you say, you know what, I'm going to set aside for the next, 3, 4, 5 years, $1,000 a year or $500 a year or whatever it is. I'm going to pool that money and then I'm going to do something more meaningful with it. But that only happens if you stop and think about it rather than just reacting when you get asked.
And what are some of the services that a financial advisor can do to help a young person who wants to get involved?
So there's 3 things, I think. One is just helping them explore what they're concerned about, what causes they care about, helping them find organizations that support those causes. A lot of people have a general idea for, children's health is important to me, or victims of domestic violence, whatever it is. They've got a general idea of what pulls at their heartstrings, but then ask them, okay, well, what organizations do you really feel strongly are doing a good job in that space? Most people don't have a strong opinion on that, and so we can help them with that. Another is really connecting them, so letting them know what their options are. So most people have never heard of a donor-advised fund, don't know much, haven't heard of giving circles. So just being aware of what those options are for long-term strategic giving. And then lastly, and this is really important too, is you're not aware of all this stuff because you're not involved in that space, you're not in those circles, you're not connected with people who are involved with this. And so an advisor who is connected can help their clients connect with people in that space so that they are getting involved and they can see firsthand, meet community leaders, meet the people at the charities, get involved and understand, see firsthand what they're doing. Go visit a charity, see what they're doing firsthand so that they start to move in those circles, they spread their network out, and then they're not as reliant on a financial advisor necessarily to do it all for them because they're building their own expertise in the space.
Now, you've mentioned a couple already, but what are the programs that exist that can help young donors?
Yeah, so I think, previous video we mentioned giving circles, donor-advised funds, and private foundations. Private foundations is the oldest. It's been around the longest period of time, but it's very involved. It requires a lot of money. It's very expensive to set up. So for most young people, it really just isn't feasible. We're talking about kind of hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to set one of these, to put aside for charity if you want to do something like that. But a donor-advised fund would be like setting up a private foundation where you're going to gift assets of a certain amount. You're going to set up a fund that's going to be invested. The fund is set up for charitable purposes, so all the money you gift to it, you get a tax receipt for donating that, and then you get to decide over time. Maybe you decide, we're going to invest this money, and whatever interest we gain, whatever gains we make on the investments, we're going to gift out annually to charities. So if we put aside, $50,000 and we make $5,000 that year, we're going to gift that. We're going to find charities, and then so that way we're not drawing down the principal. We're just funding. We have indefinitely a fund that can fund, philanthropy or charitable endeavors for a long time. Or you may decide we're going to draw it down over 10 years and we'll gift out, $10,000 a year or $12,000 a year, that type of thing. But those typically, you'd set up through a community foundation. So one, for instance, in Toronto is the Toronto Foundation. They'd set it all up for you. You pay a fee for that. It's typically 1 to 2% of the assets go to administering it all. But they can give you advice, and they take care of all the work for you. But you're kind of looking at a $25,000 commitment at the minimum. So depending on, if you don't have that type of money to put aside, you could look at something like a giving circle. And that's the least involved, the least complex, the least onerous. And that would just be where you pool. You've got, let's say, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, whatever it is. You pool it with other young professionals, other young philanthropists, people of like mind, and you decide as a group which organization or which causes you're going to support. So to give you an idea, these are relatively new, and they would typically be set up by an existing charity. So Sick Kids Foundation, for instance, has a program called the Innovators, where it's $5,000 a year for 2 years. You're giving $10,000 in total, but you're connected with all the others in this program who are of like mind. And then they pitch you. They say, here are the various needs in the hospital we have for funding. And they, throughout the year, tell you about those different areas. You get to learn a lot, meet the people, see what they're doing. And then as a group, you decide at the end of the year, hey, we want to support, pediatric brain cancer research, or whatever it is. We want to support the purchase of this machinery, or whatever that need is. So it's a way to get involved, meet other people, and it doesn't require the same financial commitment.
And in your experience, what do donors get out of it? It's a lot more than just a tax deduction, obviously.
Yeah, right. So this is going to sound really cliche, but it's just the truth. The thing that makes people the happiest, when we interact with people, the thing that they're most emotional about, that brings them those satisfaction and happiness, is when we are able to connect them with a charity and they're able to support a cause that is really meaningful to them. So if maybe somebody's passed away from a disease and they help us fund research into that disease, that is way more powerful than even helping them achieve their own financial goals. So having enough to buy that cottage, to save for, to retire it to early, whatever that is. I mean, those make them happy, but I can tell you honestly, it's just not anywhere near the same level of emotional outpouring that happens when you really connect them with the cause and they feel like they've made a difference.
Some good food for thought in the season of giving. David, thank you very much for being here today with us.
Thanks for having me.
For Morningstar, I'm Christian Charest. Thank you for watching.